Well, good morning. What a lovely day. Low cloud. Good for photography. And warming up towards the end of the week. I'm early today, so I'll go the scenic route. Oh. Everything's out at the moment. Every big flowering shrub or bush in my garden is out at the moment. And the rose on the front of the house. So how are you? Hope you're well. I'm on my way to work. We're quiet at work at the moment, and you know me, I'm quiet when I'm busy. So just turn that down a bit. So we're only sort of working part-time at the moment, which is mad. Nobody can get a dentist, and I'm working part-time. But you have to. There's a guy on YouTube that does videos on delivery trucking in the US, and basically the way they get their jobs is they have an app or two or three apps, and they check them if they need it lists all the jobs that are, need doing from where to where, and how much they're paying, and how sort of time sensitive they are, etc., etc. And he says that you can always get a job if you just take like the first job that you come across or the nearest job. He said you won't always be profitable. But he said what you should do is you should decide what your rate is, and then just stick out for that, And he said you just sit in the cab for an hour or so and just keep turning jobs down. He said, and they'll eventually give you something that you think is going to be, well worth your while. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm sitting in the cab, turning jobs down. So I had a patient ring up the other day, and are you taking on new patients? They say. They don't normally. They used to be. Do you do NHS? That used to be the do you do NHS? And there's two ways of dealing with that. The first way is the way the receptionist sometimes deals with it, which annoys me, which is no, sorry, and just hangs up. And then the way that I deal with it, which is not just to ignore the question and just sort of say, look, what's the problem? I'm only stuck behind half an hour's worth of traffic that was stuck behind that low loader. None of this traffic should be coming round this lorry. I should have priority here, guys. Well, I know what's happened. You've been stuck behind the tractor and you're all in a big crocodile, aren't you? Oh, it's a BMW. Get round there. Right, anyway, so we put a bit of money aside in a sort of savings account at the surgery, but when times were a bit better, and we've got to the point now where we've got some runway, as they call it, in the venture capital space. If things don't, if we fall below the cost of running the practice, then we are. Oh God, you'll have to listen to this on 2x. Honestly, I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say. If let's say that it costs £10,000 to run the surgery and we only get £8,000 in, then I've got 50,000, I think, up my sleeve that I can use to sort of just make sure we stay solvent from the cash flow point of view. We've got about a £5,000 tax bill coming up, but that's as soon as my accountant gets his head around the fact that we store our reserves in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is he swallowed the establishment line, hook, line and sinker on Bitcoin, and and I can't blame him for that, because he's an accountant. He's not going to change the world, is he? When did an accountant change the world? I could probably give you a couple of examples, but not not I'm talking about national finances, not individual. So he's, if I say to him, well, I think Bitcoin is a currency and therefore it shouldn't be subject to capital gains tax, he's just going to say, well, yeah, you may think that, but my job is just to help you comply with the law as it stands, not the law as you'd like it to be. And so I don't put much pressure on him, to do that. If I'm going to take a stand on the status of Bitcoin, then it'll have to be me that takes the stand. It will never be him. I mean, having said that, he's he's sort of what I call Bitcoin curious. I'm pretty certain he hasn't got any. And yet the problem is that every year for the past few years, he and I have had a chat. And he's a youngish chap, and he's quite interested to know that, he's got a client who is like a big Bitcoin fan. And someone once said that Bitcoin combines everything that people don't know about computers with everything that people don't know about money. And I think that's a brilliant description of it. He's like, he's curious, He's like he's like a postman who has been told to deliver a letter to a brothel and just stays there a tiny bit too long and has a little bit more of a look around while he's delivering it than he needs to, because he's just curious. He's Bitcoin curious, and he's very, he's a bit patronising about it all, to be honest. Last year, I think our Bitcoin had gone down, and he was like, how much is it worth? And I said like 30,000 or something, and he said, well, how much was it worth last year? And I said 35. And I still remember his remarks, because he was quite stinging at the time. He just said, oh dear. Oh dear. So now that it's gone up from 30 to 50, he's not saying, oh great, he's just like he's developed what I call a rather unhealthy interest in the fact that I've got Bitcoin, without ever once deciding that he might want to look into it himself and get some. He's well and truly embedded in the conventional financial sphere, where buying Bitcoin is about as acceptable as being found pissed under your desk next to a bottle of fentanyl. Which, funnily enough, has changed. I mean, Jamie Dimon said that he would sack anybody. He's the head of JP Morgan, which is about the most powerful and influential bank in the world, American. Said he would sack any of his traders or employees that were caught buying or dealing in Bitcoin. And they now have a cryptocurrency desk, and JP Morgan routinely buys and sells crypto. And I believe it was Charlie Munger. Everybody attributes this to Warren Buffett, but they're the two founders of the original of the fund, Berkshire Hathaway. which was quite funny for a while, because about the same time as these algorithmic trading computers started sprouting up, when they traded on the headlines, and any time there was a headline that read either Berkshire or Hathaway, they used to, just as out of an abundance of precaution, used to buy some Berkshire Hathaway shares in case they were going up to beat the crowd. And what happened was Anne Hathaway became a very big actress at the time, and was producing positive headlines all over the world. And every time she released a film, then Berkshire Hathaway shares shot up. I don't know. Well, these stupid robots thought she was a director. Like, it was just a mention of the word Hathaway. So these two guys, they set this Berkshire Hathaway firm up. And Warren Buffett, who's 94 now, has just decided to retire. Charlie Munger, his partner, died a couple of years ago. And Charlie Munger came up with a iconic description of Bitcoin as rat poison squared. So, but you know, again, you see, I don't hold that against them, because these guys are a different generation to even I or me. They Buffett always was quite honest that he doesn't ever buy anything he doesn't understand, and he invests in value. He didn't invest in profits. It didn't matter if you'd had a really, really good year. He wouldn't buy your shares unless he thought that your stocks, what you were selling one share of your company for, was less than what one share of your company was worth. So I didn't expect him to buy any Bitcoin, because he's a bit like Peter Schiff. You know, he's a US commentator that does a very good podcast on everything except Bitcoin. He was like, oh, here we go again. Do you know, because I only just recently bought this microphone. I'm just totally out of the habit of putting it on. So they're only interested in things which are tangible. And you occasionally get that with the public as well. They say, but actually, can I hold a Bitcoin? You know, is it a physical thing? And you say no. And they're like, oh well, that's it then. No. I'm not gonna invest anything that's invisible. And you're like, okay, fair enough. You know, you're about 10 years behind in your appreciation of an understanding of what money is, etc., etc. And so I'm going to let you catch up. And I've had to do that on so many things. You know, I've had to do it on computers, you know, in particular spreadsheets, which were very useful for dentists. They'd never used them for a while. Word processors, databases, mail merges, even pivot tables. You have to let people catch up. I had to wait for people to realise that colour screens were better than green and white. So let people catch up. Excuse me. So Munger, I think, was the one that said rat poison squared, and they had quite a good retort, which was that the Munger and Buffett were the rat poison. Well, they were the rats, rather. Munger and Buffett were the rats, and Bitcoin was the rat poison, which was coming after them. And the way they got rich and hideously rich, to the point where I think they own something like, well, they own hundreds of millions of pounds in cash, which they keep in cash because they pretty well run out of anything that's any value to buy, because the United States Standard and Poor's, the S&P 500 now is so grossly overvalued, because every time stocks go down, the Fed rushes to the rescue and prints a load of money so the banks can buy more stocks and shares and prop up the stock market. And so everybody else buys stocks and shares, on the understanding that the stock market can't go down because the Fed's is underwriting it. Now that might change. That may be one thing that next 5 years or so. Not because they've realised that it's a stupid idea, but because they've run out of money. They can't print any more money. They've maxed out their credit cards. Anyway, I know I'm rambling around a bit, but it does all tie together, believe me. So Munger and Buffett don't like Bitcoin because it doesn't pay a dividend. What they like to do, they like to see stocks that are, preferably appreciate and get some capital gains on, and also pay a dividend. So they've got some regular income coming in. So in other words, they're classic what they call rentiers. People who buy an asset and just let other people do the work, and then they collect the rent. And the rich dad, poor dad, Robert Kiyosaki, I forget. Anyway, he made a ton of money off this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was all about two children. One of, wondering why one of them had a rich father and the other one had a poor father, and pointing out the differences in how they went about things. And I'll save you the bother of reading the book by telling you the rich dad was someone who bought investments and they paid an income and then used the income to buy more investments, and then used the total income to buy more investments, etc., etc., etc. Whereas the poor dad was just went out and did what we call earned an honest living, and worked, was a wage slave in effect, and spent his whole life paying off his house and his car, and struggling to go on holiday. But no, back to my accountant. As I say, I think he's got a bit of an unhealthy interest in my Bitcoin. He wants to know. He's almost like doing it vicariously, in that he's always interested to know, has it gone up, has it gone down, and whenever it's gone up, he's like, oh well, yeah, but it'll go down again. I don't think he'd ever buy any. But certainly the people who are buying it now are not they're thinking, oh well, I should have been around 10 years ago and bought it then. But it's about $100,000 now per Bitcoin. And there's no maximum, because as far as most fiat currencies go, most government currencies go, there's no minimum. They will carry on printing them willy-nilly. And therefore all assets will appear to go up. It doesn't matter what it is, because the value of the money is going down all the time. The price of everything appears to be going up, and people are pretty dumb. They love the fact that the price of their house is going up, but they don't like the fact that the price of their fish and chips is going up, and they don't connect the same thing. They don't see it as, they don't understand that it's the same thing. It's always the value of their money going down that causes both phenomena. Anyway, as I say, we've got, I personally, I don't think we should pay capital gains tax on crypto, because I think it is a money. I think it was classified as a digital asset when it should have been classified as a monetary good. And as a money, you should not have to pay capital gains tax on it. But George Osborne was the Chancellor of the Exchequer who abolished tax relief on, or capital gains tax relief on currency, or on anything really, and just said, look, I'm sorry, but if you've got something that's worth 100,000, then due to our money printing, it ends up costing 200. It's still worth 100,000. It ends up costing 200,000. Then I'm going to want 20% of it, leaving you with only 80% of the original value. So that's capital gains tax and inflation are a stealth tax on everybody. That's what holds everybody back. Everybody uses money, and most people have got assets that are denominated in pounds sterling. And so, when they come to cash them in, they're going to find that, to use my favourite phrase, they can't afford a ham sandwich. Anyway, I hope the business sort of starts to pick up. We've got back to the point where we're not really booked very far ahead, but on the day we are quite busy because people bring up and say, "Oh, can I come in?" And we say, "Yeah, we've got a cancellation at 3 o'clock. Come in at 3." And they like that, I mean, that fits in with their conception of what they should expect from a good surgery. Don't say something like, oh yeah, you're in luck, we got nobody booked in at 3, or we got nobody coming in at 3, because that gives a different impression, doesn't it? It gives the impression that you're such a bad dentist you can't even fill up a day. And also you've got to cope with it mentally yourself, insofar as go on, you can go. I'm going to go behind this lorry. Anything that hits anything is going to hit this lorry first. It's very tempting to think to yourself, "Oh, I'm a dentist and I'm so bad I can't even book up a day ahead." And really, what's to stop you thinking that? I mean, you say, "Well, no, that's obviously not right," and then you think, "Well, why is it obviously not right?" It obviously is right. By definition, you can't book patients more than a day ahead. Then it must be because nobody wants to come and see you. There's lack of demand. But I think you have to look at it this way. There are other reasons why this might be occurring. It may be, and I think that this is the thing at the moment, is consumer confidence so low. Well, with the introduction of employers' national insurance, plus everybody's maxed out on their credit cards. They're perhaps thinking about paying for their summer holidays. Final payments are starting to become due and stuff like that. That private dentistry, which is a marginal activity, tends to suffer. We're in a competition for disposable cash. And, it's totally separate from the market for dealing with people who've got severe toothache who do need to come in quickly and really have no choice but to stick whatever you want to do on their credit card. So you've got two types of patients in the thin times. You've got those patients who had a crown come off and need it stuck on quick, or they've got toothache, or they've just got so much money they don't really feel the recession. They just can agree to £3,000 worth of bridge work because they've got £51,000 in their bank account. And these people do exist. Some of them are dentists, but none of them are me. And then you've got the vast majority of people who do need work and would like to come and see you, but have to time it, have to time it carefully. when they've got enough money in their account, when they've, I don't know, paid off some of their HP, or have to come after a couple of months when they've had a chance to save up the 700 quid or something that they need for a crown. Or, I mean, it could be that you are just incredibly efficient, that you pick the phone up straight away, you book people in, you're very, very good at inspection, diagnosis, treatment planning, you get the work completed quickly, and you do it to a high standard, and as a result, it doesn't need to be repeated. You've got no repeat work because you've got all your work, the bulk of your work is new patients who come in, have a ton of stuff done, and then go away, and from then on it's checkups only, because you've sorted out their restorative side of things, and you've also sorted out their brushing. So what with that thought, and the fact that I've got the money in the account, despite the fact that the accountant's going to try and tell me I owe a load of capital gains tax on it, means that I can be pretty chill, pretty chilled. Anyway, hope you're well, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.